And it's really lovely to see everybody who's still here. I imagine that Emily had to leave already, but I did want to say that I'm very inspired by Emily Lowan's leadership for us. I think it's an exciting moment, and I'm very grateful. And also, I was inspired by Liam's words. I haven't met with Liam, and I think that Sandra's in really good hands. And we do, as all of you will know, my mantra has been for years that Greens doing well anywhere help Greens do well everywhere. And where we have been doing well across the country, we continue to have, which we underplay how significant it is as Greens in Canada. We're one of the few Green parties around the world that's up against the first past the post voting system. And Sheila's going to speak to that. But the Greens of England and Wales, as an example, went for years. Carolyn Lucas, who's one of my dear friends, Carolyn won the first seat for Greens in England and Wales in 2010 in Brighton Pavilion. They didn't win a second seat till last year. So Carolyn was there by herself in a huge parliament of over 600 members of parliament. But Carolyn Lucas always kept the Green voice really strong in that parliament. And then they changed to the co-leader model. And then both Adrian Ramsey and Carla won seats last summer. And then as well, Ellie Chown won a seat, as well as Sian Barry, who won Carolyn's previous seat in Brighton Pavilion. These are particularly Sian Barry and Adrian and Carolyn Lucas, all really good friends of mine. That's one of the things I love about the Global Greens family, is that we are really connected through the shared Global Green values. We never really talk about where they came from, but by the way, they were derived from the Earth Charter. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and how bizarre that I got put on the Earth Charter commissioners. But that's how I got to know Jane Goodall. And I'm so sad to lose Jane. But God bless her, her last interview, she didn't publish it till after she died, where she said she'd really like to see Trump and Putin and Netanyahu all sent off to outer space as soon as possible, really. Now, here's this kindly, sweet Jane, but finally saying, okay, oligarchs, as Emily says, off the planet, quickly now, sharpish, because we don't need you. The planet needs us. We need our planet. We need our biosphere. So back to the Earth Charter, how was it that it ever happened that it was actually 5 years after Rio, so 1997, that I found myself around a table in Rio with Mikhail Gorbachev chairing the meeting, and my daughter Kate off in a corner with crayons playing with Raisa Gorbachev, because they didn't bother to bring Raisa a translator. So with only Russian and with Mikhail being translated, and my daughter sharing pictures back and forth with Raisa Gorbachev, and I was working then on the Earth Charter Commission with Wangari Maathai, who became the first, well, she was the founder of the Green Party of Kenya and the first person to ever win the Nobel Peace Prize who didn't come out of the peace movement. I mean, extraordinary. And right after that Rio +5 meeting ended and we had a draft Earth Charter, it went to Adelaide, Australia, where the Global Greens were having their first ever conference, and they derived from the Earth Charter principles. A professor from Australia who'd been with us in Rio took the document right into that next meeting. Brendan Mackey was his name. And they derived, he said, okay, let's take this Earth Charter document and let's see if we can get what the Global Greens believe in. Because Global Greens, of course, have been around since '83, the Green Party of BC being one of the first Green parties anywhere in the world, Green Party of Canada, again, within that calendar year. And we have done extremely well as Greens in Canada against the horrors of first past the post, electing Greens in Prince Edward Island, electing Greens in New Brunswick, electing Greens to Queen's Park in Ontario, and here in British Columbia. And when Tom was running through what last year was like, and certainly suggesting that I was happy with the election results, I have to say I wasn't. I was crestfallen. I think we all were. I gave the thank you speech, and there's pictures of me, of us being together at a Church and State Winery. That was a great celebratory gathering. But when I spoke, I thought Mike Moore, You remember it was back and forth like this, a couple hundred votes in the difference. What I didn't and when I found out the next day that Mike had not won his seat, I was not feeling happy. And of course, Jonathan Pedno's decision that he was going to leave politics in Canada and return to international human rights work, I was feeling pretty crestfallen. I have to say now, today, I'm enormously relieved and grateful that I'm in Parliament because I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought a Liberal minority Parliament would mean that we would be consulted frequently. Where are you going to vote? What's going to happen? We're going to need that vote. And I thought that the 7 remaining NDPers would be consulted frequently. Mark Carney is not who I thought he was. And the Parliament right now is in desperate need of me being there as your member of Parliament and the leader of the Green Party, because the NDP are leaderless and confused. I love my friends who remain as NDP members of Parliament. I ran into Alistair McGregor yesterday, actually in this room yesterday. I'll be writing about it for Good Sunday Morning, so if you subscribe, you'll read all about it. But in this room yesterday, we had the most extraordinary gathering of local government folks from the Islands Trust here, and from the San Juan Islands over there, and from the Lummi Nation over there, and Saut, Wasanich, and Cowichan tribe here in this room all together, talking about our common commitment to our shared ecosystem of the Salish Sea. It was extraordinary. But when I ran into Alistair, he's now working for Cowichan tribe. He said he knows from Gord Johns that how much the NDP are in a state of real confusion. I mean, Alistair was teasing me because he knows from Gord that right now I'm trying to help the NDP so much that they joke and they say I'm their whip because they don't know any of the rules. None of the big parties' MPs know anything about how to operate independent of the people who tell them what to do. So without recognized party status, and it's nothing against them as individuals and as human beings that I love working with, I'm grateful there's still 7 NDP MPs in there. But they need me running over to them, literally running over to them and handing them, saying to Alexandre Boularice or to Jenny Kwan or to Gorja, did you get in your late slip? Oh gosh. Now what that means is every time you get a question in question period, if the answer you got wasn't good enough, and when are they ever good enough, you file within an hour of you asking your question, or it's too late. You get a chance in what's called adjournment proceedings to pursue the question you've asked in a further debate. I quite often am able to get more information. Obviously, question period, you get 30 seconds to ask a question. I get that opportunity once a week. 30 seconds to ask a question. And if I get in my late show slip, then I get to ask a question later. Well, I do. I pursue that. And I say to Gord Johns, that was a great question. Get in your late slip. We need to work together because what's happened is the new Liberal minority has not gone to me or the NDP very often at all. They've started lately because the budget vote will come up. The budget's coming November 4th. But for the horrible experience of Bill C5, build everything faster, ignore UNDRIP, ignore environmental rules, that process was passed 100% with Conservative Party support. The so-called programming motion that said we can pass this entire omnibus bill in 4 days because we're going to compress everything by agreement in a vote that only went through because every single Conservative was whipped to vote and every single Liberal was whipped to vote. And with one exception, and that's Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, Liberal from Beaches, East York, everybody voted the way they were told to vote in the Liberals and the Conservatives. And that is happening again and again right now. So I'm very grateful I'm there. Very grateful. I'm leaving here, as you know, to catch the ferry, as you've heard, because I'm catching the ferry tonight so that tomorrow morning I can take a flight to Montreal so I can get the train from Montreal to Ottawa because there's not there's not, and I try to avoid flights, as you know, because of the greenhouse gas impacts. But it happens, and I wish Emily was still online. I'm sure she had to run to other commitments. But what an extraordinary thing that I would have met Emily Lowan through teacher Mark Neufeld at Claremont High School. I remember Mark saying to me, wait, you've got to meet, wait a minute, I want you to meet this Emily Lowan. She's the next you. Imagine that. And then the Rails to Relevance tour that you talked about, Mark and I dreamt this up. So in 2011, I was speaking to the students at Claremont High School's Global Studies program that Mark runs. And I said to him afterwards, gosh, I wish I could get all these students to Ottawa so I could show them around Parliament Hill. We could all just get on a train. And then Mark and I put our heads together, worked with the school district, and invented Rails to Relevance. The impact it's made on lives. And guess what? I have to make sure I'm back. First thing Monday morning is I'm greeting Rails to Relevance for it will be, what is it now? The 13th annual Rails to Relevance arrival of Claremont High School students on Parliament Hill. Deborah managed to find us a big room to rent so that I'll be able to spend time with them in the morning. And then they go to question period. And then they get to see what goes on in Parliament. And is there maybe more than one future Emily Lowan in the group I'm going to meet Monday morning who gets to see the relevance of what difference it makes when an MP goes to Ottawa, who actually knows the rules, who's actually committed to making the changes we need to make in our society? I can't wait to have the leadership race launch for the Green Party of Canada. I will not leave until I'm on a stage, I hope, in person with a big group of people in an in-person convention that also has hybrid capability. But we need to be with each other again. This party federally has not had an in-person national gathering since 2018. There have been too many people on our federal council who fought it consistently. They're now gone, reminding everyone here who is a member of the Green Party of Canada, which you all are in this room, please be sure to vote, because the cutoff to vote for federal council members is day after tomorrow, October 20th. Please vote for federal council. We do need people who are committed to the regrowth and rebuilding of the party. Our next general meeting is November 23rd, and you heard it here first, folks. Zach Pulaski is confirmed as a speaker, the new leader of the Greens of England and Wales, who is the kind of inspiration that we need, that Emily Lowan was also is echoing the words of Zach Pulaski, who, against all odds, I really didn't think he could win, because he's a member of the London Municipal Assembly, but he was running against co-leaders, Adrian Ramsay and Ellie Chown, both of whom have seats in the Palace of Westminster. But Zach won because he did the same thing Emily's doing, speaking to a place where people need to hear something more radical than, oh, well, every year we'll just do a little bit better. And over time, I guess we'll, somehow or other. No, we need to make disruptive, radical change, and fast. We need to shut down fossil fuels fast. We need to call out the fascists and the zillionaires and wherever they are, say, we've got, as Emily was saying, we've got radical hope. We've got stubborn hope. We're going to do the work. I'm quite confident that the next federal election in Canada, whenever it's going to be, people are going to look to Greens for leadership again. They're going to elect more Greens to Parliament in Canada and around the world, because right now, the hope I see on the horizon in any country where I look is not coming from social democrats, whether they're Labour or NDP. They're all, as much as I love my individual friends, I mention them, but no, useless. You need people who are prepared to call out the reality, which is radical change is needed and more citizen engagement is needed. And all of you and all of my EDA executive, and I want to particularly pause to thank Tom Neiman, who has been a wonderful, it's the Elections Canada language, believe it. I'm quite sure you know that in Green Values, the term chief executive officer doesn't come up a lot, but CEO is required by Elections Canada. And thanks to Tom for being a great CEO, seeing us through this last election. Thanks to all of you, and I know Terry and Jim in the front row, but if I can just call it to anybody, my goodness, Rich, all of the people who were in this room, who canvassed, who knocked on doors, who were sign waiting with me. That's why we held the seat. The Liberals had made a decision early on, and Alistair mentioned it to me yesterday in the corner of the room. He's saying, I couldn't figure out what they were doing, Cowich and Malahat Langford. Why did they send cabinet ministers? Mark Miller, I hadn't known this. Mark Miller went and campaigned against Alistair McGregor. Why? Because the Liberals were committed to defeating every Green and every NDPer to get the two-party system they so longed for. Mark Miller had to know that campaigning against Alistair McGregor would elect Jeff Kibble Conservative. They had to know that campaigning so hard against Mike Morris in Kitchener Centre was going to elect a Conservative, and they did. And they had to know that going to Nanaimo Ladysmith to campaign against Paul Manley would elect a Conservative. They didn't care because the Liberal Party now, maybe it's always been this way and I've been naive, is committed to a ruthless path to power, which says as long as we can keep it with people terrified of the Conservatives and being told you have to vote Liberal because it's the strategic vote, they can keep the truth under wraps. Well, Greens will never keep the truth under wraps. We speak truth to power. Some days I have to say, I feel like I'm speaking truth to stupid, but never mind. In terms of where Mark Carney is, I can't give up on him. I met him October 2nd, shared our budget ideas, but I know I can't count on him. The only thing I can count on is all of you. And with that, I am deeply, deeply grateful for your dedication, commitment to continuing to come to Green Things. I'm totally looking forward to our Christmas party. Can I tell where it is going to be and everything? You're going to say, I'll be stealing Sheila's thunder. She's always, it's so fun. We're renting Star Cinema just for us. And I said to my daughter, who's plenty smart, I said, what do you think, Kate? Which Christmas movie most reflects Green values? Didn't take her 10 seconds. It's a Wonderful Life. So let's take down the Potters of this world in their massive carriages and their monumental greed and celebrate our credit unions and our small folks who look after each other and be able to say, what would the world have been if we hadn't been here? We fight for what's right and we never stop. And I thank you so much and forgive me for my, commitment to the BC ferry system and to making sure I don't miss getting to all the connections I need to get to. Of all things, it's the first thing, I might cry, the first thing Monday morning, welcoming Rails to Relevance and the most recent group of Claremont High School students to come tour Parliament Hill with me. So thank you all. Tons of love. Hi, Shkasia.